as he attempted to physically remove my grandfather from the funeral. After that, we weren't allowed to mention Marcus Johnson Sr. ever again. The woman with the gnarled hands leaned closer and whispered, "I'm telling you, before you and your parents leave, you might want to check the house in case the vultures descend. They can't wait until you leave to tear up this house." I nodded. Probably a good idea. I'll tell my parents. If you'll excuse me, I need to run to the bathroom. I left before I screamed, searching for a spot to hide in plain sight. I wasn't comfortable being upstairs alone in any of the rooms, since we'd been staying at a nearby hotel. Being inauthentic required a rechargeable social battery, and I needed to be plugged in again. I moved slowly through the small crowd to the stairwell, careful not to make any eye contact. I started up the stairs to take a breather in the bathroom. On the way up, I realized that the way the stairwell curved at the top protected me from people seeing me, though I could see guests coming in and out. From my perch on the stairs, I could sit back and freely observe the strange mix of people who'd arrived to pay their respects to my grandfather. For a man my father seemed to despise, my grandfather had a lot of friends, or people who appeared to care about him. Some had money, based on their personal grooming, tailored clothes, and shiny shoes. Some barely had a thing, if faded pants, well-worn dresses, unkempt facial hair, and old wigs meant that in Memphis. In Atlanta, the land of the fab and still more fab, one could never tell anyone's financial status if clothing were the only indicator. The small, dilapidated two-story house my father had inhabited as a boy appeared lonely. Even as a child, I always thought the front of a house resembled a face. The windows were the eyes, and the door the mouth. I remember being a child, staring out the back window of my mother's car, judging the level of happiness of the family who lived in those homes based on the faces of the houses. I'd been right over the years, based on conversations with my friends and family. Houses did reflect the emotions of the people living within. And this house that my grandfather lived in alone, long after his wife and son left, had been depressed, with possible suicidal tendencies. The front door opened again, as yet another guest entered the repast, and I caught a glimpse of my grandfather's freshly packed mound across the street. Why would anyone choose to live across from a cemetery? Seemed a morbid place to raise a family. Then again, maybe my grandfather wanted a constant reminder when he first purchased the property that we all had an expiration date and to not take life for granted. Maybe that was my imagination talking, and not his reality. More than likely, this location was probably all my grandfather could afford. Before the door closed, a man pushed it open, almost impatiently. He didn't fit in, even in this room of misfits. This guest was a tall man, probably around my age, wearing shades and an expensive dark suit tailored to fit his muscular frame. His skin, the color of chocolate, swirled with caramel. He removed his fedora when he walked inside. He didn't seem like a man who wore hats often. His haircut was too fresh to be frequently covered. Probably only wore the fedora to protect against the annoying light rain. At the burial, I'd noticed him standing apart from the small crowd while I played my guitar and sang a rendition of Bill Withers's Ain't No Sunshine at my mother's request. I'd assumed he'd already left the burial, as I hadn't seen him since the repast began over 2 hours ago. He scanned the room before catching my curious gaze and removing his shades. His eyes were the color of a shiny new penny, or maybe it was the peeping sun's reflected light. When he strode my way, I gulped and wanted to retreat upstairs. The stranger had been the only one to notice me from my position on the stairs. Even my parents mingled through the living, dining, and kitchen, speaking to people as if I no longer existed. The stranger stopped 3 steps below me, placing us almost at eye level. Grateful for my long dress, I pulled it over my knees and greeted the stranger with a smile. If you're here to pay respects to my grandfather, we're asking guests to sign the book on the table over there." I pointed to the end table next to the door, though his focus remained on me. The stranger nodded slightly.
"I've paid my respects while he was alive.